Everyone's here. We're all ready to go. Are we recording?
Yes, you are.
So it's January 26th. This is the Personnel Committee meeting. We'll start out with roll call. Alder Dorf.
Here.
Alder Corpus Dax.
Present.
Alder Johnson.
Here.
Okay, and then we're going to get on to approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay.
I would like to make an amendment, move to make an amendment to move item number, what is it? Number 3. So it would be the third item on the agenda.
Yeah.
Second?
Second.
And a second?
If I can make a comment on that, Chair?
Sure.
So other members of the committee as well as staff, I did contact Alder Galvin and explain to him that I actually have a family conflict this evening. And so unfortunately, just based on the timing, it might be convenient for me to exit after that item. And I asked him if I should find a substitute given the other grievance hearings. And he indicated that it'd probably be best just that the three of you proceed with that rather than having a substitute come in place. So that's why I'm requesting that that item be moved ahead.
Would you like it first?
No, I have enough time to take up those first three, but I wouldn't have enough time to get into the next two.
Okay. Okay, so.
All right. So I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Did you get the
Aye.
Aye. Now, do we have to vote on it ended? No. I mean, did we just amend the agenda? No, we have to vote on it again? Yes, I'm giving a yes from the
Okay,
attorney.
so now
Move
we've
to
voted to,
approve. Yeah.
Right.
Move to approve the amended agenda. Second.
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. On to approval of the minutes. Any questions, concerns?
Move to approve. To approve. Second.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the ayes have it. On to regular business. All caught up, staff?
Yep, we're good.
Yes, ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Number 1, consideration with possible action on a request to fill the following replacement positions and all subsequent vacancies resulting from internal transfers. Does anyone have any questions for staff?
No questions.
I'll
Move to
entertain a
approve.
motion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye? Okay, any opposed? All right, that's fine. On to number 2, consideration with possible action to approve the 2021-2023 labor agreement, City of Green Bay and Local 402 bus mechanics. Does anyone have any questions for staff on this?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a approve in a second. All those in favor say aye.
We move.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes unanimously.
So Alder Galvin, I just have a clarification. Did we switch 2 and 3, or did we switch a different item that I'm not aware of? And I think we're okay.
Five will now be number 3.
Okay, 5 will be number 3. Thank you for
Right,
that.
so scoot down to number 5. And that is a request by Alder Johnson to the Personnel Committee for an update on the Alderperson Orientation Program that was submitted approximately 2 years ago. Alder Johnson.
Yeah, maybe if we could defer to staff, if Director Faulds, you wanted to maybe touch on, because you had submitted some information to members of the City Council, why don't I let you maybe just touch on that? And then I do have some recommendations of some modifications that I would go through after that.
Sure, it sounds great. So a packet was submitted to the Common Council for your review. I went through a lot of things like with the alders, go through the process at meetings, go through a lot of information about the rules and guidelines on what they can do as an alder. And then also, I think it was some contact information for city staff. And we're still working on to get from each department a summary of what each department does and who to contact in those departments. And then I think it was like our ethics statutes, and then also our code of conduct. And then there was also, I think, a PowerPoint presentation that's usually given on quasi-judicial hearings. So I think that was kind of the rundown of the information that was sent to you. The orientation was going to go through Robert's Rules of Order, some technical presentation, on like how to use request for service, how to use better use of civic clerk, and then really just kind of open up the floor for alders asking questions about what they would like to discuss at that orientation. It'll be a little different than I think a traditional orientation where it's not going to be a lot of meet and greet and introductions, but it'd be a lot more of just training and understanding the roles better.
So, and I appreciate the hard work that you guys have put into this so far, Director Faulds. I think this is a great start. Where this really started for me, when I was in my first term, I was struggling to understand how a number of things worked. And I was talking to several other alders, both existing and previous, who all said, yeah, my first term, that was, learning how things work. And to me, I looked at that as an incredibly inefficient use of time, meaning that if there's something that we can do to bring newly elected city council members up to speed more quickly, I think that allows them to be more effective. I think staff, can better lean on the talents of our alders, and it better serves our community. To me, this is kind of akin to, any time that you join a new board of directors, typically they'll put you through a board orientation. It's a training to bring you up to speed on just basic things, right? You don't have to go into great detail. So I do think that list was a great start. There are a couple other things that I would encourage us to add, and perhaps this will come when the other departments provide a little bit more context to what they do. And I'll email these to you, Director Faulds. But something additional that I would like to see is maybe some budgeting and how TIFs work. I've seen on a number of occasions where perhaps at least the dialogue that has occurred at City Council has suggested that maybe not all members of council fully understood how TIFs work, yet they were casting votes on very, very important decisions. And again, maybe I've misinterpreted some dialogue, but I think that there's an opportunity there to, I think we can all agree that TIF is probably one of the most widely misunderstood development tools. So I think if we can provide that level of overview, that would be great. And I would hand in hand with that, things like what's the difference between a PUD, a CUP? Those are all things that we vote on regularly. Zoning ordinances, what's the difference between different types of zoning? I think having some links to some of our master plans. So whether it be our comp plan or bike ped plan, the comprehensive parks plan that we just passed. I think those are important in term sheets, development agreements. One thing I noticed that wasn't in there that's typically included in these is our charter ordinance. So what are we founded on and how do we operate? One thing as well that I think seems to be widely misunderstood by the public, at least, and maybe this isn't the case for all alders, but municipal court. And how does municipal court intersect with the city of Green Bay? And then another thing that I would also touch on is kind of the different enterprises that we have, like the water utility, transit, what the difference is between a commission, an authority, and a committee. And then, one last thing that I would just maybe touch on, because I've heard this brought up in conversations a number of times, is references to either operating procedures or we've all heard it sometimes, right? Per past practice, this is what we've done. But is it a rule that you have to do it that way? So is there? I've oftentimes heard us again reference these procedures and policies that exist, but I have to admit I've never seen them. I don't know if they exist. If so things like who controls an agenda, what are the roles and responsibilities of a member of city council, almost like a position description. So I think if there are rules and policies and guidelines that members of city council are expected to follow, we should probably know what they are. And so if those things actually do exist somewhere, I think that would be an important thing to include. So again, Director Faulds, I'll email you this list, and I'm sure I'll think of more things. And to me, this is meant to be a fluid document. We should be able to add to it as time goes on. We're going to learn things are going to change. But I think, like I said, this is a great start. I commend you and the staff for pulling this together. Next step to me would be implementation.
Alder Dorf?
Can I ask Alder Johnson a question about it?
Sure.
Are you envisioning this as like a week-long seminar or just a document, a semester course? I mean, it's just like, that's a lot. Are you just thinking here's a document, here's a bunch of stuff?
I would see it being a hybrid, and I think including right, because you're not going to go through a comp plan. I mean, in a meeting, right? So, I mean, I think if you link to those important documents, here's where they're found, here's their relevance, here's why they're important. But generally, when you go through, new board member orientations, that can take a few hours, and I think that's to me that's a very small commitment. When you're bringing on a newly elected representative that you want to be able to have hit the ground running.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I went to a day-long seminar. I was given that opportunity, and it was free. And so it was a day-long seminar on local government, and learned almost all of those things you talked about were brought up. But I think that was the year that I was elected, that I had that opportunity. And I think it was put on by the League of Municipalities or something like that. So yeah, but it was a commitment of a whole day, and it was great. And I still learn. This is my third term. I still learn stuff. You still learn stuff all the time. So you're never going to cover everything, but you're right. Some of these basics are pretty important to cover. And I think there's a lot of mentoring that goes on between sitting members of council and newer members. I think that's also an important piece. But having a big document might be good too.
Yeah, and I think you just hit on another item that would be worthwhile including. If there are those professional development opportunities through the league or other resources, we should have it documented that, here's where they are and this is what you need to do to enroll for it. But again, Alderdorf, to your point, I agree there's a lot of mentorship, a lot of learning, but if we can turn that 2-year learning curve into, say, 6 months, I think that would be a good thing.
Alder Corpus Dax was up next, and then Alder Stoyer.
So I agree with Alder Johnson. I think this is a great start for training material for new alders, even existing alders. Mm-hmm. And I agree with a lot of the suggestions that he made. I'm wondering, I like the idea of having this all in one location, hyperlinks to the different documents that need to be, that are a part of the training. But also I'm wondering if let's say we do this in a 6-month type training session, ongoing training session, some of these things that we're talking about as far as what's the difference between a PUD and a CUP, and going over the budget information. Should it be set up that new alders within those first 6 months or first 4 months meet with each director and they go over these things with those alders? Should that be, just part of an ongoing training process for them over the 6 months? Maybe they sit down with, with finance for 2 hours or whatever on, in their first month, and then the next month it's community and economic development, the next month it's DPW, so on and so forth.
I agree. Alder Stoyer and then Alder Kurlock.
Thank you, Chair. These are all very good points, and I commend Alder Johnson for bringing these forward. There's one thing that I would even be willing to do if that's something that some of the other alders would like to do. I would be willing to write up several pages of my experiences, good, bad, and indifferent, of things that I've gone through, things that I thought I knew but didn't know, just to share my experiences. And I know, for example, Alder Gerlach, when she came on board, she met with all the department heads. I did that as well. I think it's important to be proactive when you become a public official. Try to gather as much data as you can ahead of time. I had a little bit of a head start because I worked for the city for 25 years. So I already had a pretty good sense and a good feel for how the government worked. But there are still things that I had to learn, and some things that I still fall maybe a little short on. But I'd be willing to do that. I don't know if that's something that would help Director Falls as well. I think having council understand Robert's rules, also the standing committees, how important they are. There's other committees that are not standing committees, but what purview they have and how important they are. There's numerous other committees that are not standing committees, and it'd be nice to know how they fit into the big scheme of things as well. So, yeah, there's other things too I could talk about, but that would be my main thing. I know Alder Dorf mentioned that she had a training session. I did as well when I first started. That was like 9 years ago. And it was an all-day thing, and I got a handle on it, but that was it. That's the only thing we ever had. So, granted, budgets are such that, we don't have a lot of money for things like that, but even if we had links or training videos or things like that, refreshers, I think that's all very important. So, again, thanks to Alder Johnson and happy birthday. Thank you.
Alder Gerlach.
I was just going to also thank Alder Johnson. I think this is a very good idea. And just briefly tell you about my experience, because I did take the League of Municipalities course. I didn't take it in one day. I took it in 4 separate courses. And that was helpful. But I met with 9 directors before I was elected. I met with them when I was running for the office. And so I met with Director Falls. It was Director Grenier who explained to me what TIFs and TIDs are. I met with Kevin Vonk and Director Ellenbecker and Director Ditch. So many of them. Chief Litton actually had a PowerPoint presentation already for me. And he told me this was his Alder orientation PowerPoint that he had given before. And I guess the things that really stick out in my mind are that every single one of them was so excited that I wanted to come and meet with them. And they were just so excited to tell me about their department and their work. It was a very, very positive experience. It would have been very valuable even if I didn't get elected. So that part, meeting and hearing from the directors and asking them questions, was really, really valuable.
I agree. This is something that's been a long time coming. I would anticipate it is going to be, like Alder Johnson said, something of a hybrid where there'd be arranged classes. But again, trying to get alders together, sometimes it's going to be like herding cats. And we have offered some training in the past that some alders have refused to attend. And I mean, that's on them. But I think getting a lot of this information down really helps the alders hit the ground running and better able to do the job that they signed up for and make them more effective sooner on. I mean, you can see there's a learning curve with new alders, and it takes a little while for them to get their feet under them and start getting really involved in their duties. So I encourage staff to keep moving forward with this. I know it's going to be more time on your hands, but it might be easier too, instead of doing it by onesies, if maybe you get a group in together all at one time.
I do.
And cover all the
Yeah,
same
good
material with
call.
them, everyone would be on the same page. So what are the next step, you think?
Yeah, so I would, the other thing I would just allude to is the importance of having this stuff documented, so that it can be referenced. So I was actually listening to Alder Dorf mention how she went through a training with the league, and Alder Dorf was elected before me. And then Alder Gerlach mentioned she went through a training with the league, and she was elected after me. And I knew nothing of such a training, right? So that's one of those things that just gets lost depending on the conversations that you might have with people. And so I've never taken that training with the league. I'm glad to know now that it exists. It's certainly something I'd like to do, but it was just a missed opportunity, I think, because it wasn't documented somewhere, and kind of given to alders to say, hey, here's an exhaustive list of things that you could or should take advantage of. To me, next step would be, I'll give this list to Director Falls. One of the things I think I'd like to do to ensure that it doesn't just fall off the radar is maybe we could table it, and then we could bring it back off the table once staff has had an opportunity to perhaps populate with these additional items. So that way it's not just receive and place on file and it's lost. I'd still like to see the updates that are made to the program, but it would take a specific action by this body for us to revisit that item then.
Would you like to have staff get back to, or maybe I should ask Director Falls, when do you think you'd be able to put something together to go over with Alder Johnson or with this committee?
So I think I agree with Alder Johnson. Like, it's going to be a fluid document. There's going to be a lot of information that you can, I think Alder Dorff was saying, it could be a week-long seminar. It could be a course, I mean, a full semester. So I guess one hesitation I have is I would like to get something on the calendar and some type of orientation put together, even if it's not perfect, in the sense of I'd rather do 2 or 3 of these versus wait another 3 months to make sure it's perfect and we get everything on that Alder Johnson. So that's what I would propose. I will be, off on leave. I've shared with the council in the next couple of weeks. So either in early February, we can try to get something started to go over some of the topics, or maybe early March and we get more of the topics in that Alder Johnson proposed.
Director Falls, how long is your leave?
I would anticipate.
Well, I tell you what, because I'm not asking that question to pry so much as just to say is if we did I want to give you enough time to perhaps add this additional content. If we say, let's plan like a test run for some time in April. So that way you have enough time to pull this additional content together, really, figure out how you'd like this to work. It's 1 year, before the next, election and swearing in of people. So it gives you another year then to fine tune it. Would that work for you?
Yes, April would work.
Okay.
All right.
So that'd be my motion, is that we refer this to staff for additional content population with the intent to schedule a demo run in April.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And maybe as an amendment, if we do schedule a week-long seminar, maybe it'd be somewhere Caribbean-oriented, maybe?
I accept that.
That'd be great.
Just saying. All right. That
Right, Chair,
passes.
I'm going to take my leave now, but thank you.
All right, and happy birthday.
Thanks.
All right, Alder Johnson is leaving the meeting, and that leaves the 3 other alders. We're on to item number, let me just get it up here. Item number 3, consideration with possible action on grievances number 2020-003 and 004 filed by the Green Bay Professional Police Association regarding the flexing of schedules for specialty team training. I believe Attorney Mather will be going into closed session right away. One moment. Okay.
That's correct. Yes. We just had further deliberations. We don't have any, the committee didn't have any questions for the parties.
Correct. So we have no questions. So I'll look for a motion.
I move that we go into closed session. Second.
Okay.
Should I read the language?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And then Alder Dorff, if you'd read the language.
Okay. The committee may convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.85 sub 1A Wisconsin statutes for purposes of deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial or hearing before that governing body. The committee will thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.852 Wisconsin statutes to take action on items discussed in closed session, if appropriate, and to consider the remainder of the agenda.
Okay. Let's close it up. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, and that motion carries. We're now back in open session. And I will entertain another motion.
Yes, I move that we proceed as discussed in closed session. Second.
All right, all in favor of this, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes unanimously. I have before me some sheets containing findings of fact and conclusions of law. And I beg your indulgence as I read through these. And also both parties, the bargaining unit and the the chief will be getting copies of these from staff as soon as they're available. Two grievances, 20-003 and 20-004, jointly came before the Personnel Committee and were heard together on January 12, 2021. The purpose of the evidentiary hearing was to determine whether the City of Green Bay violated the labor agreement between the city and the GBEPA bargaining unit labor agreement by requiring Detectives Phil Scanlon and Kevin Kang permission prior to attending SWAT team training outside of the normal work hours. And that would be grievance 20-003. And by requiring Officer Tim Kenny to similarly obtain permission prior to attending dive team training. Findings of fact. 1, this matter was heard on January 12, 2021 at the meeting that was first available after filing. 2, the parties were provided an opportunity to submit written documentation in support of their positions, which documents were admitted into the record and considered by the Personnel Committee in making their determinations. 3, requested a fact-finding hearing, and the Personnel Committee similarly determined that a hearing was not required in this matter. However, both parties made oral arguments in support of their written submissions at the meeting of January 12, 2021. 4, the Personnel Committee took this matter under advisement and continued the matter until January 26, 2021. 5, the relevant provisions of the labor agreement in deciding this grievance are Section 1.2, Management Rights, Sections 2.1 and 2.22, relating to purpose of agreement, Section 7.4.1 sub E, pertaining to SWAT team training, Section 7.7.1 sub C and sub D, pertaining to dive team training, and Section 7.21, maintenance of two-person buffer. Number 6, Section 7.4.1 sub E provides in relevant part that the compensation for SWAT team training shall, and I quote, shall be actual hours at the time for time via payback for those on their off time. Training plans and schedules must be approved by SWAT supervisory personnel. SWAT team officers may flex their workday to attend training in accordance with 7.21. Number 7, Section 7.7.1 sub D provides, and I quote, members may flex their workday or receive payback compensation for attending or conducting dive-related meeting and or training on their workday. Members attending or conducting dive-related meetings, equipment maintenance, and or training on their off time shall be compensated at time-for-time payback. Supervisor approval shall be required prior to any member flexing their hours or performing duties on their off time. Number 8, Section 1.2 Management Rights provides in relevant part that, and I quote, the union recognizes the prerogative of the city, subject to its duties to collectively bargain, to operate and manage its affairs in all respects in accordance with its responsibilities and the powers and authority which the city has not abridged, delegated, or modified by the agreement, are retained by the city, including to determine reasonable schedules of work, to establish the methods and processes by which such work is performed, and to establish reasonable work rules. The city agrees that it may not exercise the above rights, prerogative, power, or authority in any manner which alters, changes, or modifies the terms of this agreement as administered. Number 9, on June 2nd, 2014, then Captain Paul Label sent a communication to special unit commanders regarding training and flexing of shifts, special units, which stated that special unit officers have the ability to flex their schedule in order to attend the training, or they may choose to work their shift, start of training, then attend the scheduled training. And that officers need to inform their commanders of their intent to flex their shift or work their shift at a minimum of 10 days prior to any scheduled training. Number 10, on August 6, 2020, Detectives Kemp and Scanlon, both of whom are members of the SWAT team, both began working their normal scheduled workday at 7 a.m. Number 11, also on August 6, 2020, SWAT team training was scheduled from 11 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. Number 12, the parties agree that Detectives Kemp and Scanlon did not obtain supervisor permission to flex their schedules or work a portion of their normal shifts prior to the start of SWAT team training at 11 a.m. 13, Detectives Kemp and Scanlon were dismissed from SWAT team training at 3:30 p.m. after working a full shift. 14, on August 11, 2020, Officer Kenny, a member of the dive team, began working his normal scheduled workday at 6:15 a.m. 15, also on August 11, 2020, dive team training was scheduled from 11 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. 16, the parties agree that Officer Kenny did not obtain supervisor permission to flex his schedule or work a portion of his normal shift prior to the start of dive team training at 11 a.m. 17, Officer Kenny was dismissed from dive team training at 2:45 p.m. after working a full shift. 18, the GBPPA argues that officers cannot be forced to flex their hours to attend specialty training rather than working their normal work hours prior to the start of training and then attending the full training and receiving payback compensation. 19, the GBPPA also alleges that the city is discriminating against Detectives Scanlon and Kemp and Officer Kenny by permitting other members of the SWAT and dive teams to receive payback compensation for attending training. The record is silent as to whether any such other SWATers had permission to do so. 20, the city argues that officers cannot flex their work schedule to attend specialty team training without supervisory approval, as required by the unambiguous language of the labor agreement. Conclusions of law. Number 1, this grievance is properly before the Personnel Committee pursuant to Article 3 of the labor agreement. Number 2, a hearing on this matter was timely conducted in accordance with Article 3 of the labor agreement. Number 3, unambiguous contract language controls the interpretation of contracts. In Horizon Bank National Association versus Marshall's Point Retreat, LLC, 2018, Wisconsin, 1951, 380, Wisconsin, 2nd, 60, 908, NW2D, 797, citation omitted. Number 4, court will look at the ordinary meaning of the contractual language, and if it is unambiguous, the contractual interpretation remains within the four corners of the contract. A contract is ambiguous when it is susceptible to more than one reasonable interpretation. This is Town Bank versus City Real Estate Development, LLC, 2010, Wisconsin, 134, 33, 330, Wisconsin, 2nd, 340, 793, NW, 2nd, 476. Number 5, a contract is ambiguous when its terms are really susceptible to more than one interpretation. And that is Chapman versus BC Ziegler and Company, 2013, Wisconsin, Appellate 127, 351, Wisconsin, 2nd, 123, 839, NW, 2nd, 425. 6, Section 7.4.1 sub E unambiguously requires all SWAT team members to obtain supervisory approval prior to flexing their workday to attend training or attending training on their off time. 7, Section 7.7.1 sub D unambiguously requires all dive team members to obtain supervisory approval prior to flexing their hours to attend training or attending training on their off time. Number 8, because the labor agreement unambiguously requires officers to obtain supervisory approval, and neither Detective Kemp, Detective Scanlon, nor Officer Kenny obtained permission to flex their hours to attend training or attend training on their off time, their supervisors were justified in sending them home at the end of their 8.5-hour workday. Number 9, there's insufficient evidence to substantiate the GBPPA's allegation of discrimination by the city, as the GBPPA has not established that the other members of the SWAT and dive teams were similarly situated to Detective Kemp and Scanlon and Officer Kenny. Approved by the Personnel Committee on January 26, 2021, Chair William Galvin of the Personnel Committee. So, like I said, this will be, you'll be getting copies of this, and you'll be able to move forward as you see fit for each of your different organizations.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for your time. I understand there was a lot to read there. I appreciate it.
Well, this is one of the more, I'd say, involved cases that we've ever been involved with so far. And the research and the amount of discussion that went into this was pretty extensive. So, all right. So with that said, we're going to move on to item number 4.
Excuse me.
And this is another grievance. I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate or okay for us to take a quick 5-minute break.
I don't know if it is.
I understand all of you folks were basically in timeout room for a while there, but the committee's been at this since 4:30, and I think we could use a quick 5 minutes if that's okay with everybody.
And Alder Galvin, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Is there any type of motion we need about the adopting the findings of fact and conclusions law? And that would be for Lindsay or Joanne to answer.
Yeah, probably.
All right. I would entertain a motion then.
Okay, I'll move that we adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law as read by Bill Galvin.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that carries. All right. We will be recessed and back here at, say, 6:28. Imagine everyone's here.
Well, the committee's here, so
Right.
let's go
All
on,
right.
move on.
I see. Okay. I see. And Joe's here, so these are the two main players. So we'll get going with this. Our last item of the night is our last item of this section is item number 4, and that's consideration with possible action on a grievance number 20-005 filed by the Green Bay Professional Police Association regarding the removal of an officer from the K-9 unit. The committee may convene in closed session pursuant state statutes for deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial or hearing. Attorney Mather, or right, Attorney Mather, you're going to be conducting this?
I believe the parties are going to make arguments on this one first before you go into deliberation.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Then who's up first?
Do you want me to open the floor? Do I have to open the floor for it or not?
No, I apologize, Alder. I didn't prepare a script for today. I would suggest I believe the grievant usually goes first, and I would suggest setting a time limit on each of the parties and allowing a few minutes for rebuttal as well.
All right. I think last time, we did 10 minutes and then 5 minutes of rebuttal. All right. I have a lot of work this part of my phone at least. I have a timer here. I'll set it for 10 minutes. Detective Scanlon, Phil, are you ready to go, or do you have someone else that is going to speak for you?
I'm here to speak on behalf of the association, and I also have Officer Matt Lynch here as well, should the committee have any questions for him.
All right. Whenever you're ready to go, let me know and just start out.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'll try to be quick. We're here to address grievance 20-005. It's for the removal of Matt Lynch as a canine handler. I trust you have the grievance. It's the grievance head, and it's a couple-page document supporting the summary and the facts. And I just wanted to point out a couple points. I'm going to put my mask down, sorry. In the facts cited, we refer a couple comments specifically made by the chief during Officer Lynch's previous grievance that occurred on August 7th, 2019 in front of your committee. And I cited a couple of the chief's comments, and I just wanted to source that. So the source for those comments that the chief made that we cited as fact in our grievance is from the minutes of the Personnel Committee dated Thursday, October 8th, 4:30 p.m. It's from that original grievance for Matt Lynch's training grievance that so many of you were on were present. Some of you might not have been. I don't recall exactly who the committee was. And I would just like to draw attention to a couple of points. That minutes is quite lengthy. I started with the front pages, page 1. I would hope that you guys can access this in your deliberation if you need to. And then essentially at page 15, which is referred to under the verbatim minutes, there was some discussion in Matt Lynch's training grievance regarding his right to train his canine after his canine's been retired. I'm going to just kind of quote a few things. At one point, and this is coming from the minutes, an alderman asked, or an alderperson asked the question, how come you don't just eliminate the position? That was the question for the chief. And the chief's response was, and I'll quote, well, it's a specialty unit position and we cannot remove by the contract. We cannot remove anybody from a specialty unit assignment without cause, and losing your canine or having your canine die and not being able to replace that canine is not cause to remove them from a special unit position. That was regarding Officer Lynch at that time, why he wasn't removed from the program at that time. Page 16, an alderman asked the question I would ask out here is, what if one of the canine dogs dies tomorrow? If we were to replace it, who gets the replacement dog, Officer Lynch or the officer who? That's the end of the question. Chief Smith replied, it makes sense if we go to senior person, and so that would be Officer Lynch, the senior person that's still part of the unit, and that would be Officer Lynch. That's page 16. Page 17, one of the members of the committee asked, okay, so if I understand this correctly, contract says that you cannot remove unless for cause. Not having a dog is not cause. If another dog dies tomorrow, Matt would be able to bid for that by seniority, or would he get it by seniority? Chief Smith's response, he would get it. It's my understanding he would. A committee member asked, so if he doesn't train for a year and another dog dies, okay, and say the city prevails, he doesn't train for a year and another dog dies. There was some discussion about that. The chief's response, he, referring to Matt Lynch, would have the first option to get that dog. We would purchase a dog or make arrangements to purchase a dog. He, referring to Matt Lynch, would then begin training with the canine unit until the dog is ready to be picked up. He, referring to Matt Lynch, would go to the vendor. He would receive training on site from the vendor. Then he would come back here. We'd make sure that everything was squared away, and if he was comfortable and that he was certified, and then would put him in the field to work. That's Chief Smith. Page 18, another quote from the chief, because I think Officer Lynch wants to continue to be canine officer, and we've said that he is part of the canine unit. He talks briefly about a canine decoy, which is not really applicable, but he continues, he's up next. If a canine is purchased, that's why he's still part of the unit. We just don't think that the contract should enforce us to make him go to training, essentially what he continues. Those were all quotes that, from the chief that he argued in front of this committee to say that Matt Lynch is a member of the canine unit and will get the next dog. He made those arguments in support of not allowing him to attend training without a dog in order to get the city to agree to deny our grievance. So I'm not going to regurgitate the whole grievance. I understand you have it. I just wanted to cite the source of our facts that said the chief made those statements. We believe that the chief and the city did not have cause to remove Matt Lynch. That's our basis of belief on our contract and also the chief's own words. So we would ask essentially that the personnel committee approve our grievance and put Officer Lynch back on the canine unit. How am I doing for time? Am I done or do I have a minute?
You got 5 minutes, Phil. I mean, if you want to wax poetic, go at it.
Sorry, I'm talking fast. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Take your time. You've got plenty of time, Phil.
Okay. One thing I would like the city to consider is that Officer Lynch's dog, George, retired on April of 2019. On October of 2019, this committee heard his grievance for his request to continue training. That grievance was denied by this committee. We respectfully scheduled it for arbitration with the WRC. And Matt Lynch remained a member of the canine unit in good standing for, let me see, from April of 19 to August of 2020, which is over a year and 4 months before the day before he was removed from the unit. And I guess I can't. I tried to find a reasonable basis of why that decision was made 14 months post haste. It cost the city. It cost the city no money to leave Lynch in the unit and get the next dog, as the chief described. The city's obviously under the presumption that they're going to win their grievance, that Matt Lynch shouldn't be allowed to train, that this personnel committee already heard. And if the city wins this grievance, it costs the city no money to leave Matt Lynch on deck. There was volumes of testimony in that hearing about the amount of money it took to train Matt Lynch and get him his experience. And the city, by removing him, threw all that away because it essentially took his ability to take the next dog, completely contrary to the chief's testimony in front of this committee. Now, assuming the opposite would occur, if by some small chance the association wins that arbitration and Matt Lynch is allowed to resume training, the only cost the city will have to pay to train. He'll have to be on duty and train, or pay him to train without a dog. And I find no other reasonable basis to think that he wasn't removed but for he filed this grievance. This removal was on the day of his scheduled arbitration WRC. I think that is symbolic. I think you can't unring that bell to remove a person from a day that they were scheduled to go in front of an arbitrator. I think is a bell that can't be unrung, and it was a symbol sent by the city that he shouldn't have filed this grievance. And that's the association's position. We understand that's probably a little more aggressive position we've taken with grievances with the city. But I think the facts of this case, I think warrant that. So I'll field any questions, but I think the grievance itself is sound, and we'd ask the committee reassign Matt Lynch to the K-9 program.
All right. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Detective Scanlon? I have a question, Phil. So if Matt is no longer on the team and a dog dies, gets retired, whatever, and the city is going to buy another dog, is the fact that Matt is no longer on the team affect his ability to get that dog?
Correct. It actually stops his ability to get that dog. He no longer qualifies for that dog. In fact, the chief was specific in his letter and told Matt Lynch that he could reapply like any other candidate for the position.
Okay. So if he has to reapply like any other candidate, is there a possibility he wouldn't have, I have ignorance here with the K-9 program. Does he have the seniority and everything else that's required for a K-9 handler to be a handler?
Under the article of the contract, it's a merit-based assignment, which means he would have seniority points. He would interview. He would have to interview. He would have to do well enough in his interview based on a point-based system to win the interview. So he essentially is an experienced candidate. He was removed for cause. I think the right for him to reapply is inconsequential to the removal argument. He was removed from a position against direct contradiction of the chief's own testimony on the day he was supposed to have a WRC hearing. I think whether or not he can reapply just as I could as a detective, I think is irrelevant. I don't think he should have to.
Okay, so if he was left on the team, it would be a slam dunk. He would get the next dog. If he's no longer on the team, there is a possibility that he may not do as well in the process as someone else, and that he would not get the dog. In addition, is there any contractual language because I don't have your paperwork right in front of me. Did you cite any contractual language that says he stays on the team in perpetuity?
Yeah. So under the K-9 language, there's prior to a certain date, and I can pull the contract and read it from you. I think it's in the grievance. I'm sorry, I don't have it memorized, so I'd have to go back.
Yeah, no, take your time, Phil. Take your time.
Let me pull up I want to grab the contract over there. Anyway, I can explain it before I get to the article.
Sure.
When we renegotiated the contract, I believe it was 2016, we added with new handlers post 16, there is a term limit. They get, I think it's 2 dogs or 10 years.
Okay.
And it was specific language to new canine handlers after that date, which grandfathered the original, as part of negotiations, that grandfathered handlers prior to that date under the old rule, which means they get dogs until they step down. There's no terminating. And that is under the canine article in Article 7. And then obviously we cited Article 3.5, I believe it is, which is the removal for cause. And it's simply like the chief testified. The chief testified Matt Lynch would get the next dog if he stayed in the unit, but for he was removed.
Okay. And so when you say removal for cause, you mean you feel management has to show a reason as to why he was removed?
Yeah. So Article 3.5 our labor agreement. Article 3.5 our labor agreement says there has to be cause removed from a specialty unit, and it cites cause as performance-related issues, not coming in for call-ins. Don't quote me, like I can find it. All performance-related issues
Right.
is the citing for cause. And the chief testified to that in front of your committee that is indeed the case. And Matt has not been disciplined. Matt has not been given any performance plans. Matt has a clean disciplinary record. And again, I go back to the chief's own testimony that was the case.
All right, thank you. Yes, Alder Dorf.
So I have one question. I read in the grievance, Lieutenant Booth told both Scanlon and Biller that the chief would not give Lynch another canine as he was so close to retirement, and it would be too much of an investment in someone that close to retirement. Is that discriminatory, or is that a valid reason?
Well, that's what he told us. And I don't know if there's been any dispute of that, but he told us, Detective Biller and I, that.
So you're not disputing that. You're not saying that that's any reason why this is coming forward, that you don't feel it's discriminatory.
I think let's leave it to a totality of circumstances test. Matt was on the team 14 months after his dog was retired. We have this conversation with the lieutenant who tells me he's not going to get another dog. He's too close to retirement. And then the day of an arbitration hearing, he's removed for cause in direct contradiction to the chief's testimony. Complete contradiction. It's in the minutes. So there's a reason why he's removed. And we'd argue that it was without cause. Whether it's because he's so close to retirement, it's investment, it's not a reason. Matt could choose to work till 55 if he wanted to. Matt has given no indication that he's going to retire. I think we need to be careful when we start talking about end dates for law enforcement. Some of the finest officers in our department were fine officers right up till the day they retired. And to imply that someone shouldn't be given a position strictly because of the point they are in the career, I think that's probably not a good policy to have when it comes to your employees. And I admit those were Lieutenant Booth's words, not the chief's, but Lieutenant Booth told us that.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Corpus Dax? No, nothing?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Detective Scanlon. Now, is the chief wanting to speak, or Director Falls?
I'll start off, and then Chief
Okay.
Smith can join in. So the position the city is taking is that the contract language is silent on what happens to the canine unit when a dog is eliminated. So the city retains the management rights to remove an officer if the individual no longer has a dog partner. So the committee ruled in 2019 that an individual cannot attend training without a canine. Then almost a year later in 2020, we have Officer Joe Merrill, who's also in the canine unit. His dog retired, and he moved on to a new assignment. Chief Smith notified Officer Merrill that he would no longer be on the canine unit and was removed. That same day, Officer Lynch received a letter that he would also be removed from the canine unit because the city reserves the right to determine the amount of dogs and officers in the unit. So the fact that an arbitration was that day is merely coincidental. We had one officer that was removed. We went from 6 dogs to 5. We then sent a letter to Officer Lynch saying he also would be removed because we've determined the amount of dogs will be at 5 and not 6 or 7. So additionally, Officer Lynch was removed because Officer Lynch does not have a dog right now. He does not have any canine equipment. He doesn't have a canine patrol squad that's set up for canine. He does not attend canine training. He's never gone out on a canine call. And this has been over a year and a half. I think a year and 4 months is what the union has stated. So for all practical purposes, he is not a canine officer right now. And removing him really has no effect on Officer Lynch for practical purposes. So the union has, I think, a narrow interpretation of what cause means under 3.5. There's a phrase in 3.5 that states, examples of cause may include but are not limited to. And then it describes performance issues. That means there's more reasons for cause other than what is described. It's not limited to what is being described. And then the union continues to bring up a binding past practice, and I think there's some misinterpretation on this. What they're saying is that in 2016, the contract language for the term length of a canine officer was bargained. So therefore, all of the current canine officers were grandfathered in for an indefinite term. So what I did was, I went back at the notes between our HR director and between the union for the 2016 contract. And I went back and forth between the proposals that were made for the canine unit officer term length. So the previous contract had a term of 5 years and one dog, whatever is greater. The union proposed to have 10 years or the length of 2 dogs, whichever is greater. So there was a back and forth on that. And what happened was, when that term length changed, all it did was it changed the term length for canine officers going forward. It did not state anything about grandfathering in canine officers going forward. So there was an issue that was talked about, though. The issue was the current canine officers, who was Lynch and Merrill, would they have to take the new selection process and the new testing to be in the canine unit? And everyone agreed, and I wasn't there at the time, they agreed they would be grandfathered into the unit. They did not say you'd be grandfathered for as long as you would like. They said you'd be grandfathered into the unit without having to test. So if you look at it that way, Officer Lynch can either be removed because of the previous language, which is 5 years or 1 dog, or it could be for 10 years and 2 dogs. Or you could look at it and say the contract is silent to how those previous canine officers should be handled. So if you look at Officer Lynch's situation, he started on the canine unit in spring of 2010. He was removed in August of 2020. That is 10 years, and he's had 2 dogs. So if you look at it from that perspective, if you use the current language right now, he can be removed. Now, like I said, the union is arguing that the interpretation of the contract in the past binding practice, which we know is very difficult to prove, is that the current officers, Lynch and Merrill, have this binding practice to be on the canine unit as long as they want. And I think that's a misinterpretation. The grandfathering in was that they didn't have to test to be on the unit, but they still had either removal for management rights based on the determination of the number of dogs and officers, or 5 years and 1 dog, or 10 years or 2 dogs. Any of those situations, Chief Smith has the management right or the cause to remove him from the canine unit. So just to recap, Officer Lynch, he doesn't have a dog. He doesn't have any canine equipment. He doesn't attend training. He doesn't go out on any calls. So the cause for removal, like Detective Scanlon's saying, it's not disciplinary. Chief Smith is not disciplining him. What he's doing is he's saying that it's a management right to have 5 dogs, 5 officers. That is why he's being removed. And it was coincidental that it fell on arbitration day. So the committee The city's position is that the committee should be denying the grievance because it's a management right to determine how many people are on the unit. And then the second reason is because he's already put in 10 years, 2 dogs, and you're able to remove him because of that.
Okay. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Director Falls? All right, I'll lead off and maybe someone else will come up with some questions. Director Falls, I don't know if you can answer this or it would be the chief. Why 1 year and 4 months to remove Lynch from the canine unit? 1 year and 4 months, no dog, no car, no training. Why not like the very next month?
I'll start off and then I'll let Chief Smith add if he wants to. So, I believe city and the management has the right to determine how many dogs and officers are on the unit. And if, I think most chiefs, and I think Chief Smith as well, when he was at the committee and stated, if we get another dog in a couple of months, it's going to go to Officer Lynch. And I think he meant that. I think when you have, a dog that retires, you don't necessarily just want to, remove the person right away because we might get a dog donated or get some financial assistance to get another dog. So the grievance and the arbitration was pending. I think we were trying to be prudent and waiting for that arbitration to occur. And then after a year and 4 months, when he's been in no training, doesn't have a canine, and we've looked at, we believe, Officer Merrill now retired and he's being removed. We now went to 6 dogs to 5. And the city of Green Bay budgets for 5 dogs. We went to 6 and 7 because, and Chief Smith can add to this, because we had some financial assistance to get 6 and 7 dogs. But Chief Smith always wanted to be at 5. So when Officer Merrill retires and moves away from the canine unit, we now have 5 dogs. Officer Lynch has not had a dog in a year and 4 months. We now can set it at 5 dogs.
Can I follow up on that? Your question, Alder Galvin?
Sure. I have several more, but let's stay on the same. Yes, let's stay on this thread.
Question,
Yeah,
just
go
on
ahead.
this question. But then that also brought it to the 10 years, right? By waiting that year and 4 months, then that also brought it to the 10 years that's mentioned in the contract. You can have 2 dogs, 10 years. So they would have had to waited the 10 years, I think, to honor the contract. And that to me is what made sense, why it wasn't done until then. Maybe that didn't enter into it, but that's why I thought you waited 10 years.
It was part of it. That was part of the conversation. It was also more than 10 years and 2 dogs, so we could make a decision based on that. But then we do understand the interpretation from the union. The city doesn't agree with it in the sense of they believe that Merrill and Lynch were grandfathered in as long as they wanted to. But yes, when it was in August and Officer Merrill moved on and it was past 10 years and we were down to 5, we believed at that time we could remove Officer Lynch.
Thank you.
All right. Director Falls, you said you checked for notes from the negotiations for the 2016 contract that changed the tenure of the canine officers. And you could find nothing that referenced previous canine handlers being grandfathered. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm going to ask Detective Scanlon. Does anyone, I don't know if you were on a bargaining unit back in 2016 or not, does anyone on your organization have any memories of those discussions or negotiations?
Yes. And I would just simply say that the association completely disagrees with Director Falls' analysis. And I will cite simply 7.3.1 Parents D. And I hope you all get a chance to read it specifically because it is quite specific. For canine officers appointed after July 1st, 2016, it will be 10 years of the work life of 2 dogs. That was specific to canine handlers appointed after July. That is what the rule is meant to be. Everyone behind the walls of 307 South Adams in our association, including all our canine handlers, know that previous canine handlers going back to Bill Resch and the days before, those canine handlers stayed dogs until they chose not to be. And Article 3.5 is very clear. 3.5 does not cite management rights. Article 3.5 is very specific to removal. Removal from a special unit or team or assignment. Removal from a special unit team position or assignment shall only be for cause. Examples of cause may include but are not limited to poor performance, reluctance to perform assigned duties, failure to successfully complete training, continued failure to be available for call-in, poor documentation, and the like. It does not say and management rights. This is specifically addressed. Anyone who's worked in our department knows that clause historically means if you don't do your job well, you can be removed for cause. The city is just choosing to use that as a argument after the fact. And to just address Joel Merrill was not removed from the canine unit. Joel Merrill accepted a position with the community policing unit, Mr. Galvin. He accepted that position. He became a community police officer. And Joel Merrill got the same letter that Matt Lynch did. And I emailed the chief asking for clarification. And the chief said that Joel Merrill is no longer in the canine unit because he accepted a new position and that he was not removed.
Okay, can you on 1 second, Phil? Attorney Mather?
Just would remind the chair that the parties will get the opportunity for a rebuttal. And if answers to questions can be limited to answering the questions,
all right,
it would be helpful.
All right, you're correct. I'm sorry, Phil, for taking you out of line like that.
I apologize. I was a little wordy.
No, that's that's more than fine. Okay, I'm done. I have no more questions. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions? Alder Dorf.
I just have kind of an odd question. What difference does it make if he stays on or not? Does it cost the city money? He doesn't have a dog. He's not going to training. Or is it just that if there was another dog, you might not want to assign him as a handler? I'm not sure what the problem is in keeping him on the unit.
I think the bigger picture is that the city's position is the chief can determine the size of the canine unit. And if you look at Article 7.3, there's nothing in there that talks about any conditions or parameters on what the size of the canine unit is. So if Chief Smith has determined that it's at 5 dogs, and that's what the city budgets for, this grievance, I think, allows the city to continue to do that. And that's where I think it's more important than just one person and Officer Lynch.
And then to follow up on the question, that what was read from the contract, it sounded pretty much, so clarify it for me that as of that date, those people hired forward were on for 5 years or 10 years. Help me understand why that doesn't apply.
Sure. Thank you for asking. So I have some notes, and what I can do is, I could always scan them. I apologize, I didn't get anything in writing to you guys earlier, but I can scan you the notes and the proposals that was from the GBPPA. So the first proposal it might not have been the first, but one of them was that, this is on the K-9 unit, 7.31. Length of assignment is too restrictive given training associated with position. Change from 5 years or life of 1 dog to the latter of 10 years or life of 2 dogs. Allow retesting after 10 years. Then, tentative agreements between the city and the union. Newly appointed canine officers will have to pass a physical fitness standard. Precise standard yet to be agreed upon between parties. Existing canine officers will not be subject to such standard. So what that meant was they're grandfathered into the unit. They don't have to test. They're automatically in. And then what Detective Scanlon read is about the term length. The previous term length was 5 years. The new one is 10 or 2 dogs. There's nothing that talked about the term limit for the 2 existing officers. They're assuming that now they can just be on there voluntarily until they want to leave. And that's not the position of the city. The position is they're grandfathered into the unit, but they would have to be removed either as it's not defined, at 5 years or 10 years. That's what the city's position is.
Okay, thanks.
Director Falls. So if I understand correctly, at one time the contract was a officer could be a canine handler for his entire career. And then you're saying the contract was changed to being 1 dog or 5 years?
Yeah, so the contract I'm looking at that was for prior to 2016, it was for 5 years or 1 dog is what the language was changed to. I don't know what it was previous to that.
Well, I mean, when I was on the department, it was for life of the canine handler. I mean, like Detective Scanlon referenced Officer Resch, he had, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 dogs over his career. So then from what you're saying then is at some point in time, the contract went from that to 5 years, 1 dog. And then in 2016, it was renegotiated and became 10 years or 2 dogs.
That's correct.
Right.
So if there's a previous contract that had canine unit for life, I have not looked at that. I looked at the contract previous to what we have.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's no further questions, everyone will have a chance for a rebuttal. And Bill, are you prepared? Do you want a few minutes?
Couple things.
Okay.
I've never heard of a 5-year rule in the contract. The association, I mean, if you'd like, I don't know, we have old contracts. I'll gladly send you one if you want to use it for deliberation. I don't know what the rules of your order are.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't think it matters what the contract was before. I was just trying to get clarification.
I'm just saying for the purpose of argument, we completely disagree with the city's assessment that there was ever a 5-year rule on 1 dog. Never heard of it. The canine handlers never heard of it. Those are the people that are doing the job and have a working knowledge of it. In fact, I'm completely remiss to comment on where that even came from. I think paragraph D is pretty unequivocal. It's pretty specific. I would ask the personnel committee to go back and read the chief's statements. The chief was asked specifically, if I recall the quote, what if a year goes by? And the chief said he'd get the next dog. Those are the chief's quotes. And I understand. Having a comment, never been 5. In law enforcement, we work with a lot of lawyers, and I understand union lawyers can have a different opinion than a city lawyer. And if I hired a lawyer and Matt Lynch hired a lawyer and the chief hired a lawyer and city hired a lawyer, I think all 4 of us could probably come up with some sort of argument to support our facts. I think we all know that. I would like the personnel committee to put this to the smell test. Okay, that's what I'd like. I understand you have an attorney that's going to give you the legal process. I'd like you to put it to the smell test. All right, I would like you to look at what the chief testified to. I'd like you to look at the fashion in which it was done. And it stinks. He was removed for no reason, but for he was in arbitration. And if he wins, he'd get to resume training or get the next canine. And I think the arguments that have been made are a backwards approach to make a legal argument. This is the first grievance I've ever written where the chief did not respond in writing. This is the first grievance I've ever written to HR where HR did not respond in writing. And here we are today. Neither of them denied the grievance, and here we are today. So I would like the personnel committee to use the smell test along with the remainder of that. And we'd respectfully ask that you put Officer Lynch back on the canine unit. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone have any questions to Detective Scanlon's rebuttal? I would have, I got 2 questions. Detective Scanlon, are you aware of any of the current canine handlers leading the position?
No, I'm not. I mean,
Okay.
We all know the volatility of police work. One could retire tomorrow. One could dog go down tomorrow. One could be subject to discipline tomorrow.
Sure.
To guess the future is difficult.
Okay. All right, thank you. And Director Falls, rebuttal?
I guess I'd like to start out saying that when the letter was given to Officer Lynch, the assumption was that, when we reached out to the union, we anticipated that it would be grieved. And we were going through contract negotiations, and our attorney reached out to their attorney to see if they would want to include that into arbitration so you have the same issues at the same time. It took months before Detective Scanlon reached out to the chief through step 1. Again, we asked the union if it was going to go straight to arbitration. They didn't get back to us, and then they sent it to my desk. I then asked for more time to respond, and he said, let's go to step 3. That's why we're here. It's not anything that smells, nothing to it, just that is what happened. That's why there's no response in writing. So I think, what it comes down to, like we said, there's nothing in the contract that talks about when a dog is removed, how do you handle the officer? That's a decision that the Personnel Committee made 2 years ago. We're asking you to use the same analysis here, that if someone does not have a dog and they do not have, they're not able to go to training, that they're not in the unit and that Chief Smith can remove them. So the removal is either the management right to determine the size of the canine unit, or it's for cause because the person does not have a dog, does not have any equipment, does not go out on calls. So they're two different things. And I think when the union is focusing on cause, those are two different things. You can do management rights or you can do under cause. And like I stated, I looked back at the contract. I hope I didn't misinterpret it, but I saw that the paragraph stated 1 dog for 5 years. And if I misinterpreted that, I apologize. But I did look back at the previous contract. That's what it stated. And then I guess I'm just wondering, why do we have the language today of 2 dogs and 10 years if it wasn't 5 years at one point? And the whole point of those, the 10 years and 2 dogs, there was a lot of the article that was restructured for the selection process and under merit. And I believe moving from 5 years or 1 dog to 10 years and 2 dogs was kind of a compromise because of the selection process that was agreed upon.
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm wondering. If they were indeed grandfathered and there was a previous contract that said 1 year and 5 dogs, then I would imagine they'd be grandfathered to 1 year and 5 dogs. But if that was not part of the previous contract, if the previous contract was the open-ended canine forever, and they believe that this is where they fall under being grandfathered, I can see. So I guess we're going to need some clarification on that to see if there was a contract that stated 1 year and 5 years and 1 dog, or if there was just an open-ended canine for life type thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but I thank you for your information.
And can I just say one response to that? Is
Sure.
that, the reason for the removal, like I said, is we can determine, the city can determine the size of the unit. And also it's because the individual is not, does not have a dog, is not training. So, that could be for cause to remove the individual. But when you look at the language, I just think it's an unreasonable interpretation to believe that they grandfathered in indefinitely when that's nowhere in the contract, and I didn't see any notes on that. I believe it was more about grandfathered into the specialty team unit without the selection process. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I make one comment, just strictly timeline?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so Director Fauld cited that months went by before he heard something. August 27th was the day of the correspondence that Officer Lynch was removed from the program. August 28th, same date, is when we filed the grievance, 1 day later. Our contract specifically defines timelines. We have 25 working days to file a grievance, and then every step after that is 15 working days. So the chief has 15 days to respond. Working days, he did not. I gave it to Director Fauld. He has 15 working days to respond. He didn't. And I think we were scheduled for personnel now in October. I guess I don't know where the months came in. If you 15 working days comes out to about 23 calendar days, and we have step 1 and step 2 and step 3. We're now when we went asked to go to personnel was in December. I don't know where months came into play. There's clear timelines in our contract. The association did not violate those timelines. The city chose not to respond to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
To go into closed session or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, unless you want to discuss it in open session.
I would recommend that we go into closed.
Okay. I move that we go into closed session. And I will read the language. Unless is there a second? Was there a
Yes.
second?
Yeah, I seconded.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. The committee may convene in closed section pursuant to section 19.851A Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial or hearing before that governing body. The committee will thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.852 Wisconsin statutes to take action on items discussed in closed session, if appropriate, and to consider the remainder of the agenda.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are in closed session.
Real quick, are you going to do similar to our last grievance and is notify us, or do you want us to wait?
I would say, Phil, I think we're going to discuss it and then we'll render a decision and findings of facts and conclusions. I don't think I said that in the right order. At the next personnel meeting. So I would say if you folks want to call it a night, I go call it a night. If we need to get a hold of you, we will, but I don't anticipate that happening.
Well, officer, this is Officer Lynch duty day, so he's not on the road because because he's president for this grievance, as is his right. So I know he wants to return to work.
Yes.
We can sit around and wait for 2 hours, or an hour.
I think I don't want to tie you guys up. You got lives to lead. He wants to get back to work. You're on your own time right now, as are the other officers and the supervisors. I would say you guys go home. If we need any clarification, we'll have you contacted by Attorney Mather requesting the necessary information, and we'll discuss that when we do our complete our deliberations at our next meeting.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
We good?
We're good now? Even with that?
Motion to go back into open session?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. We are back in open session. I'll entertain a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to have the staff proceed as directed in closed session.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That passes unanimously. Also, both parties should be aware that we'll be asking for briefs, and you'll be receiving a email detailing that from Attorney Mather. All right. On to the next item. Hang on a second. My sunlight's not working. Hang on. All right, here we go. Report of routine personal actions for regular employees. Does anyone have any question on that for staff? Okay, I
Move to
will.
receive and place on file.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, our next meeting date will be February 9th, 2021. And I'll entertain a motion on adjournment.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Joe,
Bye, everybody.
if we
Have a
don't
good
see you
night.
before, good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck with the baby.
I'm hoping you guys will see me before. We got a few more weeks.